Welcome to Good Revenue. Today we're going to talk about positioning and why it goes hand in hand with pricing, which might be a surprising insight, but we'll learn more. Positioning answers important questions like, what are we? Who are we for? How do we win? It frames our differentiated value and it sets the context for our target segment of customers. That part is important. Positioning is a set of business choices, and it makes the most of our current market opportunity with the product we have today. It also helps us strategically. If we have tight positioning, we can prioritize our offers, so that's on the pricing and packaging side. We can influence more effectively. Those are the messages, the value props, how we communicate with our buyers and users. And it can help us build new value for the target segment because we know what those buyers really care about and what they're willing to pay for. Tight positioning in particular is where you can really win. And the reason is that if you do your positioning well, you focus, you make tough choices and trade-offs to get strong positioning. And this is where I think companies can really benefit from customer research. There are two reasons. One is I think it's pretty tough to accurately assess value from the perspective of the customer. Customers define value, not us. And that's because we build features or services, capabilities, attributes. That's what we create or offer. The benefits, that's the anticipated utility for our buyer or our user. But the value is a slightly different concept. Value is about importance and worth, and it maps to customer goals. So we can have a strong hypothesis. For example, saving time, saving money. Those are often the top two values or value propositions of a good or a service that we offer, right? Pretty common. But at the end of the day, only the customer is going to be able to tell us if they actually care about those potential benefits. And more importantly, how much do they care? And how much are they willing to pay for a solution that saves them time or money? Because in general, those are great things. But on the buyer side, they are also prioritizing our solution against all the other problems that they have in their lives or in their work, against other solutions from other vendors or something they might build themselves. There's just not a decision that they're making absent a lot of trade-offs. That's where I think customer research can be really helpful because it helps us understand how customers are making trade-offs. Back to positioning for a minute. Big reason that I think you should do positioning and you should take it really seriously is when you have tight positioning, it drives alignment across your entire company, particularly product, marketing, sales, customer success. And that is because not only do you understand the trade-offs if you use customer data, but once you as a leadership team have agreed on that, you are moving those conversations about prioritization, about resources up to the front of the line. And you're giving your leadership team a chance to actually get together and figure out jointly how to build sustainable differentiation into your roadmap and how to communicate more effectively with your customers, both when they're ready to buy and even more importantly, if you've listened to our episode about the buyer journey, before they're in market. So I think positioning just has a huge payoff if we get it right. On the other hand, sometimes companies choose not to position and they do it deliberately. I think this is a real mistake. And the reason is if you don't position, you're trying to sell to everyone. And if you're selling to everyone, you are selling to no one. Different target segments have different priorities and values. Segmentation, which we also discussed in a prior episode, is how you get more power and leverage from your limited resources, including your time. So if you don't choose a target segment and really go after it, you're never going to reach real scale. You're just not going to be able to get the efficiencies that resource prioritization provides. The center point between these two topics, pricing and positioning, is value. And I just want to go back to this for a minute because it's so important. Value isn't about how complicated the problem is that we're trying to solve. It's not how long it took us to build a solution. It might not even be what we intended when we built our product or our services. And That's why that value assessment coming from the customer is so important, because there might be gaps in value, both between what we built and what the customer perceives and gets value from. It might be that we have multiple target segments that we could sell our product to, and different segments get different value out of it. So we might want to know what the value differential is there, so we can determine which of those segments is actually closer to the value we offer, and we can prioritize them. There are really interesting trade-offs like that you get from this bigger customer research process. And it's not a one and done thing. Like, this is insightful and helpful data. And I think if you commit to it, it just continues to give huge gifts to your business and to your customers, because you're going to deliver more products and services to them that they're actually really excited about. And this type of research is pretty different from typical product discovery, because it's not about narrow problems as much as it is about a broader value discovery process. And we'll get into the details of that in a separate episode, but that's the core of it. And I think that the way to go about it is to let go of what you think customers value. You've got insights. I would go in with a hypothesis and then see where the data takes you and see what customers actually tell you. Now, back to positioning. So positioning is a two-way street. This is another point that I think is worth mentioning. As a company, we're setting the context. We're trying to work from our strengths, and we're looking for opportunities and potentially vulnerabilities in the market. That's the strategic piece of this that you get to decide as a leadership team. And I think it's a better decision when you have this broader data instead of just my opinion versus yours versus another person's on the team. Once you set a position, customers get to choose whether or not they buy it. I think people forget this sometimes. You can't just tell customers like, hey, we are this solution, because customers are smart. These are not dumb people. If you stake out a position you can't defend, they're going to ignore you, and it's not going to be a good use of your time. That's why you've got to deeply understand value, and you have to be realistic about where you shine and where your competitive advantage exists. If you don't position, or if you don't position tightly enough, what I think happens pretty consistently is that you end up chasing the market. Maybe you were even the leader in a market earlier, but you're not now because someone else has basically taken the ball and they're running away with it. Here are some of the symptoms of bad positioning. Product. Product is often building an endless list of features. And this is because either the product team or the engineering team, or maybe it's the founder, thinks that the more they build, the more customers are going to value the product. And the opposite is true. And you can talk to customers and they will validate this. Customers get really confused when you have 100 features, especially if when they talk to your sales team, all they get is a list of 1,000 things that the product could do. It's really hard to grok the value when you do that to customers. And this happens sometimes because I think product teams understandably are trying to build the future and they have a tough job. But when you're keeping an eye on all of these hundreds of horizon competitors, you might end up in a feature war, and you're not focusing on sustainable differentiation and value that the customer uniquely cares about. You're missing all of that when you choose not to position it, because you're seeing absolutely everyone as a potential competitor and you just miss the opportunity. On the marketing side, marketers have a lot of trouble when there isn't tight positioning. You end up communicating to absolutely everyone because we don't know who our targets are. The sales team has no idea what's happening. They're going to try to talk to anyone who will take a meeting from them. Usually they're seeing different people in deal conversations versus what the product team is seeing and believes to be competitors. So there's a huge gap because they have no alignment around who we're actually trying to beat. And at the end of the day, the team that I always feel has the hardest job is the customer success team, because they end up drowning in retention problems and they're trying to fix churn and all sorts of other issues that are really not their fault. In fact, it's a product that's all over the place. It's unfocused marketing, and it's a sales team just trying to do anything they can to close any sort of deal for anyone who will talk to them. It is just a recipe for mess. If you can commit to a framework, and I'll talk about our framework in just a minute, I'd recommend that you test it regularly, at least once a year. But if you are in a highly competitive market and you're getting insights from sales or from your marketing that a competitor is really gaining traction or there's some other change in the market, you might want to do this more often. And it's not a huge commitment in terms of budget or time. We're talking way less than the budget that you're probably spending on Google Ads right now. So if you follow our framework, I can virtually guarantee the ROI of the money that you invest in pricing and positioning. First step is to start with prioritizing what matters to your business and what your strategy is. Is there a specific milestone you're trying to hit? What are you planning to give up? Is improving margin more important? Is there some other metric that's really going to drive your future growth? What does it take to win at the next stage of your business? That's what we want to establish. Second, you want to build a hypothesis for the positioning. I would start with internal data, some interviews across sales, marketing, customer success. I think finance can have some really helpful insights, particularly in terms of customer contracts, profitability, other data like that. And to the extent that you have any qualitative insights or even quantitative insights from your customers, this is very helpful. You want to answer questions as follows. First, you want to try to understand what your segmentation is. And I think the good starting point is to look at your best customers, the ones that are delivering good revenue to you, the folks you really love, and you'd be happy to have many more of them, and see if you can identify what they have in common, particularly if they are using your product in an unusual way, or if you know that they evaluated other competitors and still chose you. Insights like that can be really helpful as you move forward. Next, you want to evaluate the competitive alternatives from the point of view of your customer. What else do they explore, whether it's a comparable competitive solution or if it's a situation where they're going to fix this problem themselves somehow or they'll resource it in some way. Having a sense of that and the weights of these solutions is really important. And what I mean by that is if you are in a market where half of the potential customers are likely to build their own solution or just hire more bodies to solve the problem, it's good to know that. Third, you want to get your value hypothesis together. And this is, what is your perception of how customers perceive you? What do you believe they see when they think of your differentiated value? Finally, the market context is really important. So this is where any competitive intelligence you have, your insights into what is going on in the market and what might be coming are really helpful. Now, in the third stage of the overall process, you're going straight to the source. You're going to do some deep customer interviews, and these qualitative insights are going to add real color to your hypotheses. And as much as you can, try to stay open because it's likely that there may be some elements of what you believe to be true that are being challenged by customers. Fourth step is to validate the customer insights and to test your hypothesis at scale. And we do this through market research. And as I've said many times before, there is a lot of data out in the wild. And I think that virtually every market has some opportunity for quantitative insights. Most markets, I really do believe, including in B2B, you can get to statistical significance. And even if you can't, I still think that you're better off doing this kind of research because you're going to have so much more information than if it's just you sitting with colleagues around a table in an executive meeting debating this. It just depersonalizes the whole conversation and it gives you a different perspective on what your opportunities are as a company. Fifth, this is where you get back together as an exec team or leadership team and you align on a positioning strategy based on all the data that you have. You'll now know what the answer is to who is your target segment, who cares the most and is willing to pay you for the value you provide. These are your segments. This is going to help you prioritize both your go-to-market, acquisition, retention right now, and it's going to help you with your product roadmap as well as your pricing and packaging. Competitive alternatives, again, from the customer's point of view, who do they compare you to? What matters, what doesn't matter? It might give you some interesting insights too into some information about maybe incumbents or the relative strength of your competitors that you didn't necessarily realize before. I think this can be surprisingly useful. Third, The question of value is, as I say often, the most important information that you can get out of this kind of customer research. And you will often get a really helpful scorecard, if you will, on all the features and capabilities that your product or service offers to customers. Customers will prioritize them for you. They're also going to tell you what doesn't really matter. And I have found that a lot of companies are surprised by this when they ask the question, what can you live without? What you're looking for are the differences between what we think customers want and what they say they actually value. And these insights are going to, again, help you as you build new value. They're also often going to give you insights that might help in your campaigns or content, key messages, reasons to believe, proof points. There's a lot of rich insights that come out of the questions of value. If you are differentiated, and hopefully you are, this is also where the differentiation and the importance of it to your customer will shine. Or if your customers say, hey, I don't actually think this is as differentiated as you do, I think that's really helpful intel as you move forward. Finally, when it comes to the context that you want to set, what I like to do is look at this data almost in the aggregate, like taking a step back, because what I'm trying to see is where can we best exploit the market opportunity and leverage any of our strengths, our value, any particular affinity customers have for us, and again, any differentiated value that we have. Now, back to the overall framework. The sixth step is where we get to launch all of this. So we're going to launch new pricing, we're going to deploy this positioning, and we're going to build our playbooks for marketing, sales, customer success, and product. And because we did this work, this positioning and pricing together, we're going to have packages that are so much stronger and more effective for target customers because we're choosing to focus on the customers that we can truly delight and provide value to. So we will have new packages. We can basically determine how to better bundle features to create more value for customers. This might be having a good, better, best. It might be more of a land and expand. We might try something similar to LinkedIn where we have distinct segments and clear offerings for both of them. In LinkedIn's case, for recruiters and for salespeople, for example. There's a lot of exciting things you could do when it comes to packaging. I think this is just an endlessly helpful set of opportunities and choices. And I often find the data to be very clear in terms of the directions on which we can go. And keep in mind, once we design these packages, we still want to test and optimize them. We might have some questions around timing and when we actually want to deploy them, but we'll have the data and it's a very strong starting point. We'll also learn what the deal killers are, which is which features prevent customers from buying from us. And I find this to be another surprising area of insight for a lot of companies, particularly if you have a feature-rich product or a lot of components to services you offer. When you ask customers about your top features and their benefits, they often will come back and tell you, actually, I don't care about these 7 things, 8 things, 10 things, whatever. And those insights are really helpful because you want to remove those so that people don't feel like they're overpaying for something they don't actually get value from. Third, you'll get the insights about key messages. That helps you communicate more effectively with buyers. And finally, this is another hidden gem. I have found that every time I've done this kind of customer research, we end up with really interesting insights into how our customers think, operate, what they care about, what they prioritize. And those insights directly translate into better content and campaigns as well. There's usually the germ of something, if not data we can immediately use that helps us turn around and educate our buyers about some kind of problem that they're facing that they care a lot about. So there's a really awesome virtuous cycle in this research that will really benefit you, not just at this time of launch, but as you move forward to really capitalize on your new positioning and the pricing. So as we wrap up, just to reiterate, the core insight here is that value, once again, is the unlock and it's the bridge between positioning and pricing. Segmentation is the next most important question that you're answering when you do this work in a data-backed way. And that's because you learn definitively who your target segment or segments could be and what you need to do to communicate and create more value for them. It also gives you a bigger picture when you go through a methodology like this. You really get to understand how customers see you in the wider context of their situation. And a lot of times we miss that when we're working hard on something that we're passionate about, that we've invested a lot of energy and resources into. But your customers don't. They honestly compare you to viable alternatives, and you should do the same. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review. We're a new podcast, so it really helps listeners find us. If you'd like more information on today's episode, check out the show notes or send us a message.